The proposal and the secret. The evening sky was painted with shades of red and purple, the kind of sky that made people believe something important was about to happen. He stood near the old wooden bridge, his hands shaking. In his pocket, he carried a small silver ring. It was not the most expensive ring, but it was bought with love. His heart beat faster than ever. He kept thinking about the woman he had loved for so long. She was not like anyone else he had met. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and her voice carried a tone that was both warm and mysterious. She was alien, but to him, she was everything. Today, he decided he would ask her to marry him. She arrived quietly, her steps light as if she floated instead of walked. Her smile was soft, but her eyes seemed filled with questions. She looked at him and tilted her head. "You wanted to meet here?" she asked gently. He nodded, trying to swallow the fear rising in his chest. I wanted to tell you something," he said, his voice trembling. He pulled the small box from his pocket and opened it slowly. Inside, the ring sparkled in the fading light. Her eyes widened, surprise mixed with emotion. "Will you marry me?" he asked, the words escaping like a storm breaking free. For a moment, there was silence. He could hear only the river flowing under the bridge and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. She did not speak. Her fingers touched her lips as if she needed time to breathe. Then finally, she looked at him with tears forming in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will." His body filled with joy, relief, and hope all at once. He laughed softly, tears threatening his own eyes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. She smiled. But there was something strange behind that smile, something heavy. They embraced, the air around them cool and calm. But when she pulled back, he noted. Her eyes shift away. She avoided looking straight at him. Her hands trembled slightly. He held her shoulders gently. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," she replied quickly, too quickly. "Everything is fine." But her voice was thin. Her words carried a hidden weight. He tried to ignore it, tried to believe that nothing was wrong. But deep inside, a cold thought pressed against him. She was hiding something. He could feel it in the way she tightened her grip on his hand, in the way she forced her smile. They walked together down the path from the bridge. The night air grew cooler. Lights from the small town ahead flickered. He kept glancing at her, hoping she would open up, hoping she would explain, but she stayed quiet, her eyes lost in the stars above. At one point, she stopped and looked at the sky as if searching for something. Her lips moved slightly, whispering words he could not understand. They sounded like an alien language, soft and quick. He pretended not to notice, but the unease inside him grew stronger. "Are you sure you are happy?" he asked once more. She turned to him, her smile gentle but her eyes shadowed. "I am happy," she said, "more than you know." She kissed his cheek, and for a moment he almost believed her, but the whisper of doubt remained. As they reached his home, he noticed she kept glancing behind them, as if afraid someone was watching. Once, she even paused at the doorway, scanning the street carefully before stepping inside. He asked again if she was okay, and again she answered too quickly. "Yes, of course." Inside, she sat on the couch, her hands folded tightly together. He placed 2 cups of tea on the table. He sat beside her, watching her closely. Her silence felt heavy. Her mind seemed far away. He reached out and touched her hand. "You can tell me anything," he whispered. Her eyes glistened. She looked at him, but then she shook her head. "Not now," she said. "Please, not now." His heart tightened, but he nodded. He did not want to push her. Still, he could not shake the feeling that her secret would soon change everything. When she finally leaned against his shoulder, he closed his eyes, pretending for a moment that nothing else mattered. But even in that peaceful moment, he knew the truth. She loved him, but she was hiding something far bigger than both of them. The night ended quietly, but the silence between them carried more weight than words, and deep in his heart, he understood. Their story was only beginning, and the secret she carried would soon turn his life upside down. The arrival of the sisters. The next morning began like any other. The sun rose gently over the horizon, casting golden light across the quiet town. Birds sang, and the streets were still empty. He woke up with a smile, remembering her answer from the night before. She had said yes. She was now his fiancée. His heart felt light, But when he turned to look at her, she was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, her face pale, her eyes locked on something unseen. She did not notice his movement until he touched her shoulder. She forced a smile. "Good morning," she whispered, but her voice carried unease. Before he could ask, a strange humming sound echoed from outside. It grew louder, shaking the windows. He ran to the door, opening it with sudden fear. Above the street, a bright silver ship hovered. Its surface glowed with alien markings, and beams of light shimmered along its edges. Neighbors ran outside, pointing at the sky. Some shouted, others hid inside their homes. The hum grew sharper, pressing against his chest like a heavy weight. Then, slowly, the ship descended, landing right in front of his small house. The ground trembled, dust rising into the air. His fiancée grabbed his arm tightly. "Don't be afraid," she whispered quickly, but her eyes betrayed fear. The ship's door opened with a hiss, and 5 figures stepped out, one by one. They were tall, graceful, and unlike anyone he had ever seen before. Their skin shimmered in soft colors, blue, green, silver. Their eyes glowed in the sunlight. "These are my sisters," she said quietly, as if ashamed. He froze, staring at the 5 alien women walking toward them. Each carried an expression of authority. They did not smile. They moved like they belonged, like the street itself was theirs. The tallest sister looked directly at him, her eyes sharp. "So this is the human you chose," she said coldly. His heart raced. He opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. The neighbors whispered, their fear growing. Some even ran back inside, slamming their doors shut. The sight of so many aliens in one place was too much. The sisters entered his house without asking, their movements calm, as if this had already been decided. His fiancée followed them quickly, turning back to him with pleading eyes. "Please, trust me," she said, her voice soft but desperate. Inside, the sisters spread across the rooms, touching objects, moving chairs, inspecting the walls. One opened the fridge and frowned. Another ran her hand across the shelves of books. The house no longer felt like his own. It felt invaded. He finally found his voice. "What is happening? Why are they here?" he asked sharply. His fiancée lowered her eyes. "They need a place to stay," she said. "They cannot go back. They have nowhere else." The words cut through him like ice. He wanted to shout, wanted to demand answers, but when he saw the fear in her face, he stopped. Something inside him told him this was bigger than just family visiting. This was survival. The tallest sister sat down on the couch, crossing her arms, her voice cold but firm. "We are not guests," she said. "This will be our home too, Aunt. Till the danger passes." He stared at her, his chest tightening. "What danger?" he asked, but she did not answer. Instead, all 5 sisters exchanged a silent look, one that spoke of secrets and plans he was not part of. That night, the small house felt crowded. The sisters spoke in low voices in their alien tongue, their glowing eyes watching every corner. His fiancée tried to comfort him, holding his hand, but even she avoided answering his questions. He lay awake, the sound of whispers surrounding him, the hum of the ship still in his ears. He felt trapped, as if his life had been stolen in a single day. Yesterday, he had asked her to marry him. Today, 5 strangers had taken over his world. He closed his eyes, but the thought would not leave him. This was not a coincidence. Their arrival was not random. They had brought something with them, something dangerous, and soon he would be caught in the middle of it. Strange rules in the house. The days that followed were nothing like what he had imagined. After the proposal, he had thought marriage would bring peace, happiness, and a life where love would grow stronger. Instead, his small home turned into a place ruled by strange customs and silent tension. The 5 alien sisters moved through the house with confidence. They changed things without asking. The furniture was moved, the lights dimmed, and even the windows were covered with strange glowing cloth that shimmered at night. He could not recognize his own home anymore. The first sister, tall and sharp-eyed, declared that certain foods were no longer allowed. She removed the meat from the fridge and replaced it with glowing fruits from their ship. The second sister placed a bowl filled with strange blue stones on the table and said it must never be moved. The third sister drew strange marks along the walls, using silver ink that pulsed faintly in the dark. When he asked what they meant, she only smiled and whispered, "For safety." The fourth sister took his phone, inspected it, and said, "No outside contact after dark," returning it with a warning look. The fifth sister, the youngest, followed him silently everywhere, her eyes curious but also watchful. She asked questions about Earth, about humans, but whenever he tried to ask about them, she grew quiet. His fiancée tried to soften the rules, holding his hand when he grew frustrated, whispering that it was only temporary, but the more rules appeared, the less temporary it felt. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but every time he looked at her face, the fear in her eyes kept him silent. The neighbors noticed the changes too. People no longer visited. They crossed the street to avoid his house. Rumors spread about the glowing lights inside, about strange figures seen at the windows. One evening, an old man muttered, "That house is cursed now." Before hurrying away, he began to feel trapped, his own world shrinking, his own choices slipping away. One night, he tried to cook his favorite meal, but the tall sister appeared, her voice firm. "Not allowed," she said, taking the pan from his hands. He clenched his fists, his anger boiling, but he could do nothing. The silence at night was the worst. The sisters gathered in the living room, speaking in their alien tongue, their voices low and urgent. Sometimes he caught single words in English, words like danger, hunted, or soon. Each time his chest tightened, the fear growing inside him. One evening as he entered the room, the sisters stopped talking at once, their glowing eyes turning toward him. The youngest whispered something in their language, and the tallest stood up, her voice calm but heavy. "You must follow our rules," she said. "If you break them, not only you, but she will be in danger too." His fiancée lowered her head, her hands trembling. She did not defend him, she did not speak at all. He realized then that even she was bound by these rules. Her love for him was true, but her loyalty to her sisters was unbreakable. He felt his life slipping further away, but deep inside, curiosity battled with fear. What were they hiding? What kind of danger followed them? And why did they choose his house of all places? That night he could not sleep. The glowing marks on the walls pulsed softly, filling the dark with a silver haze. He lay awake, listening to the whispers below, and a thought struck him. Maybe the rules were not only for control, maybe they were shields, maybe the sisters knew something he did not. And then, as the night grew colder, he saw it, a flash of light outside the window, not from the town, not from the stars, but from something moving silently in the sky. His breath caught. He closed his eyes, pretending he had seen nothing, but he knew the truth. The sisters were not here only to live. They were hiding, and the rules were not random. They were preparing for something that was getting closer every night, hidden danger. The next morning he woke to find the sisters gathered in the living room, their voices sharp, their eyes glowing brighter than before. They did not notice him at first. Their language flowed quickly like water rushing through rocks. When he stepped closer, the room fell silent. The tallest sister stood, her gaze like steel. "You should not listen," she said coldly. He wanted to argue, but something in her tone froze him. She was not giving advice, she was giving an order. His fiancée walked over, taking his hand gently, her voice soft. "Please, trust me," she whispered, but her trembling fingers told another story. Throughout the day, he noticed more changes. The sisters placed strange devices near the windows, small, metal pieces that pulsed with faint light. They whispered to each other as they worked, sometimes stopping to look at the sky, their faces tense. That evening he stepped outside, desperate for fresh air. The sky was clear, the stars bright, but then he saw it again, a flash of light moving too quickly. Not like an airplane, not like a star. It darted across the horizon and vanished, his chest tightened, his breath shallow. When he returned inside, he saw the sisters already waiting, their faces pale, their eyes dark with fear. The second sister spoke in a low voice. "They are close." He froze. "Who is close?" he asked, but no one answered. Later that night, he woke to faint voices outside his window. He pushed the curtain slightly, his heart racing. At first he thought it was the neighbors, but then he saw them, shadows moving near the trees, tall figures with glowing red eyes, their shapes almost human, but not. He stumbled back, fear gripping him. The youngest sister appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "You saw them," she whispered. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. She grabbed his arm, pulling him into the living room where the others sat. His fiancée was already there, tears in her eyes. "You must understand," she said, her voice breaking. "My sisters, we did not come only for family. We came to hide." The words sank into him like heavy stones. He looked at her, then at the sisters. "Hide? From who?" he demanded. The tallest sister leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "From hunters," she said. "They are from our world. They do not forgive. They do not stop. They want us dead. And now they know where we are." His heart pounded. The room spun around him. He tried to understand. Yesterday, he was just a man with a fiancée. Today, he was trapped in a war he did not know existed. He sat down, his hands shaking. "Why here? Why my house?" he asked, his voice almost breaking. His fiancée touched his hand, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Because I love you," she whispered, "and this is the only place I felt safe." The sisters looked at each other, their silence heavy. He understood then that the hunters were real, the danger was real, and now he was part of it, whether he wanted or not. That night, sleep did not come. Outside, the shadows moved again, faint red lights blinking through the trees. The glowing marks on the walls pulsed brighter. The house felt like a cage, a fragile cage standing against something far too strong. He lay awake beside her, his thoughts spinning, his fear growing, and one question burning in his mind. How long before the hunters came through the door? The test of loyalty. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a waiting room before a storm. The sisters spoke less now, their eyes fixed on the windows and the dark skies above. Even his fiancée seemed distant, her smile forced, her hands always trembling. That night, the hum of the alien ship outside grew louder. The sisters had activated it again. Glowing symbols flickered across its surface. Strange energy waves rolled through the air. He could feel them in his chest like a second heartbeat. Suddenly, the youngest sister burst into the room, her voice sharp. "They are here," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Everyone froze. He rushed to the window and saw them, 3 shadowy figures at the edge of the trees, their eyes burning red like fire. The tallest sister stood calmly, her voice steady but heavy. "The hunters have found us," she said, "and they will not leave without blood." He felt his knees weaken, the reality crashing into him. This was no longer whispers, no longer hidden glances. It was here, danger standing only steps away from his D. Or his fiancée clung to his arm, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Please," she begged, "stay with me, don't leave me, no matter what happens." Her voice broke, her eyes pleading, but his mind raced. He thought of his life, his job, his future, everything he had worked for, all of it now threatened by something he did not understand. He wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, to save himself. The sisters began preparing quickly, pulling weapons from hidden compartments in their ship, blades that shimmered like glass, guns that hummed with blue fire. Their movements were sharp, practiced, not like frightened refugees, but like warriors ready for war. The tallest sister looked at him, her eyes cold. "You must decide," she said. "Stand with us, or stand aside." His chest burned, his heart pounded. He looked at his fiancée, her eyes begging him not to abandon her. He thought of the night at the bridge, the silver ring, her whispered yes. And he realized his choice was not about safety, it was about love. He took a deep breath, his voice steady now. "I will not run," he said. "If she stays, I stay. If you fight, I fight." A silence filled the room. The sisters exchanged looks. The youngest smiled faintly. His fiancée collapsed into his arms, crying, whispering thank you over and over. The tallest sister nodded, her voice calmer now. "Then you are one of us," she said, "and you must be ready for what comes next." Outside, the shadows grew closer, the hunters' steps echoing in the night. Strange sounds rose from their throats, a low growl that shook the trees. The sisters stood side by side, weapons in hand, their glowing eyes fierce. He picked up one of the strange blades they gave him. Its edge pulsed with silver light. It felt heavy in his hand, but his grip tightened. He was no soldier, no warrior, just a man who loved a woman. But tonight, that would have to be enough. The hunters moved closer, their red eyes burning through the darkness. The air grew cold. The night held its breath. Inside the house, fear and courage twisted together, and he understood. This was the test of loyalty, the test that would decide not only his future, but hers, the battle for trust. The night air shook as the hunters stepped out from the shadows, their bodies tall and armored, their red eyes glowing like burning coals. Their voices growled in a language he did not know, but the meaning was clear. They had come to kill. The sisters moved into position, their weapons humming with blue and silver light. Each stood like a warrior ready for war. their movements perfect, trained, powerful. They were no longer guests in his home, they were soldiers preparing to defend their lives. He stood behind them, clutching the strange silver blade they had given him. His hands trembled, sweat ran down his back. He had never fought anyone before, never even held a weapon like this. Yet here he was, standing against alien hunters in his own backyard. His fiancée looked at him, her eyes filled with fear and love. "Be brave," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Trust yourself." The first hunter charged, moving with speed faster than the human eye could follow. The tallest sister met him head-on, her blade sparking as it clashed against his weapon. The air exploded with energy. Light crackled. The sound echoed like thunder. The second and third hunters spread wide, trying to flank them. The sisters broke into pairs, their glowing eyes locked with deadly focus. Beams of light fired from alien rifles slicing through the dark. He felt frozen, his legs heavy, fear gripping his heart. Then the youngest sister shouted, "Move!" Her voice sharp like fire. He saw one of the hunters rushing toward him, his blade raised high. Without thinking, he lifted his silver weapon. The clash nearly knocked him down. Sparks burst in his face. The hunter snarled, pushing against him. The strength was too much. His arms shook, his knees bent. He was about to fall. Then his fiancée cried out his name. The sound filled him with sudden fire. He pushed back with everything he had. The blade hummed, glowing brighter, and for a moment, the hunter staggered. The sisters took their chance. Two of them struck from the side, their weapons piercing through the hunter's armor. He screamed, a sound that shook the ground, then fell silent, his body collapsing with a heavy thud. The fight grew more fierce. Energy blasts lit up the sky. Trees shook, the ground cracked. It felt like the world itself was breaking. One hunter grabbed the second sister by the arm, throwing her against the wall. He raised his weapon to strike. But before he could, the human charged, swinging the silver blade with all his strength. The weapon cut deep. The hunter roared in pain, his red eyes dimming. The sisters looked at him, shock in their faces. Not because he had fought, but because he had fought like one of them. No hesitation, no fear in that moment. Only courage. The last hunter realized he was outnumbered. His growl turned to a scream, and he fired wildly, blue sparks tearing through the air. The youngest sister fell to her knees, hit in the shoulder. Her cry filled the night. Rage burned through him. He ran forward, swinging his blade again, this time with no fear. The hunter stumbled back, and the tallest sister finished the fight with one final strike. The night went silent. The hunters' bodies lay still on the ground, smoke rising from their broken weapons. The forest around them burned with faint glowing fire. He dropped the blade, his chest heaving, his arms heavy. He had never felt so weak and yet so alive. His fiancée rushed to him, holding his face, tears on her cheeks. "You fought for us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You proved your heart." The sisters gathered, their glowing eyes softer now. The tallest sister looked at him. For the first time, her voice carried respect. "You are not only her chosen, you are one of us now," she said. The youngest, clutching her wounded arm, smiled faintly. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked around at them, at the broken ground, at the silent night, and he realized the truth. This was no longer about a proposal, no longer about marriage. This was a family bound by survival, trust, and loyalty. The battle was over, but deep inside he knew this was only the beginning of a greater war, a new beginning. The night after the battle was heavy with silence. The hunters were gone, their broken bodies carried away by the sisters' ship. But the memory of their red eyes still burned in his mind. Every shadow outside the window seemed alive. Every whisper of wind felt like danger waiting to return. Inside, the house was in ruins. Furniture broken, walls cracked, silver markings glowing brighter than ever, yet in the middle of the chaos they were alive. His fiancée leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her tears soft but filled with relief. The sisters moved quietly, tending to their wounds, repairing their weapons, and scanning the skies with their strange devices. Even in rest, their eyes never lost focus. They were warriors who lived between battles, never free from the threat that chased them. The youngest sister, her arm still bandaged, sat near him and whispered, "You fought like one of us." Her voice carried respect, but also something deeper, trust. He smiled weakly, his body still aching. "I didn't know I could," he admitted. His fiancée took his hand, her grip firm. "You did it because you love," she whispered. "And love gives strength no weapon can match." The tallest sister stepped forward, her expression no longer cold, her eye as softer. "You stood when you could have run," she said. Because of that, we are alive. We will remember this. He felt the weight of her words. For the first time since their arrival, he realized he was not just an outsider anymore. He was part of them, their fate now tied to his. Days passed, the town grew suspicious, whispers spread of strange lights and violent sounds from his house. Neighbors avoided the street, rumors of curses and ghosts filled the air, but no one dared to ask, no one dared to come close. Inside, life found a strange rhythm. The sisters still kept their rules, but now he understood them better. The glowing stones were shields, the silver markings were barriers, the silence after dark was protection. Every rule was not about control, but about survival. Yet even in this strange life, moments of peace appeared. He and his fiancée walked together in the garden, the sisters watching the stars from the roof. Sometimes laughter returned, soft and careful, like fragile light in the dark. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, his fiancée stood before him, her eyes glowing softly in the dusk. "When I said yes," she whispered, "I knew it would not be simple. I knew my sisters would follow. I knew my world would become your world." He touched her hand gently. "And still, I would choose it," he said, his voice steady. "Because saying yes to you means saying yes to everything you carry, even if it is danger, even if it is war." She leaned into him, her tears warm against his chest. The sisters stood quietly in the background, for once their eyes not on the sky, but on them, watching, approving. That night, as the stars filled the sky, the hum of the ship faded, the house stood quiet. He realized this was no ordinary life anymore. He was not only a man who had asked a woman to marry him, he was part of a family that crossed worlds, a family hunted but unbroken, and though fear still lived in the corners of his heart, so did courage. He knew the hunters would return, stronger, angrier, but he also knew he would not face it alone. For the first time since the sisters arrived, he looked at the future, not with dread, but with hope. Their story was no longer about secrets or survival. It was about a new beginning, a new family, a love strong enough to face the universe together.